Minister, it's very good of you to come to Telford today. I wonder if I could just ask you a few questions about your portfolio and ways in which they impact on people in Telford. First of all, the flooding. We had Ironbridge problems, and I just wonder if you could update on support that is going for flood victims.
Well, Lucy, thanks very much for keeping me up to date on what's been going on in Telford. First of all, on flooding, we did have unprecedented weather this winter. East Coast surge in December, then very heavy floods, rains through January, February. The simple message is we will be spending a record sum of money over the course of this Parliament, £3.2 billion on flood defences. And I see three stages. First of all, we'll continue with big schemes run by the Environment Agency. Secondly, there will be partnership schemes. I was in Leeds 2 days ago, where there's a £50 million scheme, 10 million from the local council, 5 million also from private business, which will completely change the position of Central Leeds. And there's 500 acres in Central Leeds, which is now going to be freed up for development. So I'm extraordinarily, massively positive and determined to see these flood schemes through, because they are horrendous floods for people's private business, private life, terrifying for children to get up in the middle of the night with filthy muddy water, really bad for business. And part of our long-term economic plan is, over the course of this Parliament and the next Parliament, is to make 465,000 properties flood-proof.
Now, something that gets raised with me quite often is the badger cull, and how would you say that's relevant to people living in Telford? Why should they be concerned about badgers and badger culls?
Well, people in Telford should be very concerned about the terrible increase in bovine tuberculosis in our cattle population. Because we're surrounded by dairy farms. There's a dairy in Telford, the old Nons plant, which is now owned by Muller. The Muller plant is a huge operation in its own right, and there are significant beef operations. So everybody in Telford has a huge interest in seeing a healthy cattle population living alongside a healthy badger population. And sadly, by only addressing the disease in cattle, which is what we've done, we've seen an extraordinary increase in disease in cattle. And we're killing 90 perfectly healthy cattle a day. Every other country I've been to, go to Australia, go to New Zealand, you go to the United States, but very importantly, go locally to the Republic of Ireland. They've been doing all the same controls we do in cattle, testing and slaughtering diseased cattle, but they've also taken out diseased wildlife. So in Australia it was water buffalo, in the States it was deer, in New Zealand the brush-tailed possum. But what's very relevant for us is the Republic of Ireland, it's the badger. So they had just under 45,000 cases of TB in cattle in 1999. That has come tumbling down to 15,612 last year because they've removed the diseased badgers. And so that is why we're determined to find a humane, safe and effective way of removing diseased badgers, so that we remove the disease in the badger reservoir as we do in the cattle reservoir. In the meantime, we're pouring a huge amount of public money into developing vaccines, but sadly they're further down the road. It's going to take some time.
Okay. And then finally, could you tell me a little bit about your view on GM crops?
My view on GM crops are very public, that we now have 18 million farmers cultivating 175 million hectares, which is 12% of the world's arable crops, which is 7 times the surface area of the United Kingdom. And everybody from here in Telford who's been on holiday in America, or who's been to Brazil, or who's been to Argentina, will have eaten GM crops directly. Everybody in Telford who's eaten meat in this country is almost certainly eating meat from a chicken or a pig or a bullock that will have eaten GM feed at some stage. So as far as I'm concerned, this is an established technology, and I am working very closely with our pro-GM partners in the Council at the European level to allow those countries that do want to go ahead with GM to be allowed to do so, because otherwise I see Europe becoming the museum of world farming, and we'll slip further and further behind.
Good. Well, thank you very much indeed, Minister, for coming to Telford and for answering our questions. Thank you. If you want to take part in future Ask the Minister videos, you can follow me on Twitter or on Facebook, or subscribe.